This week on the podcast, we give you the fastest way to improve profit without actually selling anything more. Welcome to the Profit Cash Growth Podcast. This is the podcast for 6 and 7 figure business owners who are looking to grow a financially successful business. My co-host, Claire Hancott, is a finance director, chartered accountant and entrepreneur. And every week, I'll be exploring guidance and frameworks designed to help you increase your profits, improve your cash flow and grow your business. So, Claire, you look like a unit with an eye problem.
Yeah, this new camera angle's not really working for me, is it?
For people that are wondering what on earth we're on about, we just wanted to try for the shorts filming like directly into the camera. So I've got my iPhone on a stand like right in front of my face, and Claire's kind of talking at me, but obviously it looks like she's talking at the camera. And she said, if I look at you, does it look like I'm talking to the camera? And I'm like, well, it looks like you've got a slight eye problem, but other than that, it's fine. But I did say it's not as flattering this angle, isn't it? And
I thought double chin maybe, something like that. And you said, no, you look like a unit. Which, to be fair, I spend a lot of time weight training, particularly my shoulders. So not all bad, actually.
I just meant,
all things considered.
I think because you're wearing a really thick jumper today because it's cold.
With shoulder pads.
Just like quite wide, like on the shoulder side.
Right. So. Anyway, Simon,
I look
what
like
on earth is going on
like
this week?
in American football, like, hut, and then throw the ball to you. No, I'm joking. This is going really, really in the wrong direction.
Can we get some focus?
Can I tell a joke?
Oh, no, you've been driving me mad with these bloody jokes. Every night when you get into bed, you have started telling me a joke and they're so bad. I don't know why you're wasting your breath on them.
I think I need to put it out to the rest of the listeners because this was one of my favourite. I mean, I've had a few good ones, but last night...
No good ones. None, zero.
A mummy was found in Egypt covered in nuts and chocolate. Archaeologists believe it could be Pharaoh Rocher.
Yeah, shocking.
I thought it was good. I won't tell the Scrabble one then. Let's move on.
No, that's my favourite one actually, the Scrabble one.
Oh,
doctors are concerned for
John, who's been taken into hospital after eating a lot of Scrabble tiles. They said if there's one more bowel movement, it could spell disaster. Come on, let's move on to this week's news story of the week.
We needed a bit of lightheartedness because you're about to hit us hard with this wonderful, uplifting news story of the week, aren't you? So that was quite an apt start. To be honest with you,
I saw this on Joe Rogan actually, so I'm just on
what, the Scrabble joke?
No, this news story because him and Chris Williams were talking about it, and I thought that can't be right. So I googled it, and I found out that it's absolutely right that they've an organisation called the World Population Review conduct a survey of depression rates by country every year. And the depression rates by country for 2026 are out and they're here. And I was absolutely shocked that the United Kingdom is the second on the list of 266 countries that are on here. We're the second most.
Really?
It's just, I could not believe this. So we are wedged between Syria, who are number 1, war-torn Syria, and war-torn Ukraine at number 3, and the United Kingdom are between those two. So we have a depressive disorder rate of 7.44 per 100,000 people. So that's our rate. Syria's above that. Ukraine's only 6.75. So basically, you'd be less depressed if you moved to Ukraine for a war. What do you make of this, Claire? I mean,
just pathetic. What I'm not clear on is where these stats have come from. Are they people self-proclaiming that they're not happy, they're depressed? So is it like a self-diagnosis, or they're just sort of testing the mood of people? Versus these are people that have been medically classed as being depressed. Because if it's people that have been medically classed, well, I mean, anybody can get depression these days because it's an easy route into benefits, isn't it? So we know that is a real problem. Not everybody, of course, there are some genuine people out there with depression, but
there is actually some details on here. So for depression to be diagnosed, symptoms must last at least 2 weeks. Some medical conditions such as thyroid problems or vitamin deficiencies can mimic symptoms of depression and need to be ruled out. Luckily, depression is one of the most terrible mental illnesses, and those who have been diagnosed have multiple options depending on their diagnosis. But it goes on anyway, so it gives you a bit of an idea of that.
We're just a country of overdiagnosis, aren't we?
I just couldn't believe it. I mean, just literally just read down. You've got Syria, UK, Netherlands, which I don't know why the Netherlands is so much of a problem, Ukraine, Tunisia, Lebanon, Greece, Switzerland, Turkey, Iceland, Mauritius, Chile, Libya. That's kind of the top of the list.
Switzerland and Iceland.
Is there any country that you really want to know where they are in the list, Claire? Just
America.
I can do a search. So, USA. Ooh. Shouldn't even call it USA in here. America. Not even in here by the look of it. What else would you call it? United States. Yes. No, it's not even in there as that. Apparently they're not even in the list.
Okay. What about Dubai? The land of...
That's the UAE, isn't it?
The land of the young adventurer at the moment, isn't it?
United Arab Emirates, they're at 4.81. So we're at 7.44, they're at 4.81.
What number is that in the list?
Well, it gives you a percentage depression, so they're 4.81% against our 7.44.
What, you can't see where they sit in the list?
Doesn't specifically do that. I just searched it. Yeah, I mean, I can give you a rough estimate. They're still in the top. They're in the top 20%. So
interesting.
They're right at the bottom of it, but they're in the top 20%. I really want to know who's right at the bottom. Where should we move to? I've not looked at this list either, but I'm going to go for the absolute least depressed country in the entire planet with only 2.02% is Singapore.
Wow.
So there you go. And then above them are really all Far Eastern countries. So you've got Laos, Indonesia, Vietnam, Niger in America. I mean, in
I guess
Africa.
Is this saying more about people's health system and whether they recognise illnesses like that?
Singapore, one of the best health systems in the world.
Yeah, but just
Phenomenal.
because something's got the best health system doesn't
work.
mean that they've got the best mental health system. And also, I think that culture and the way that people view, in some cultures, having depression or being a female, for example, is viewed as a weakness.
To be honest, 10 off the bottom, Italy. Yeah. So it's not, European medical. So, yeah, Seychelles, that's a good one.
Right.
Anyway.
So, Singapore, Seychelles or Italy, here we come.
There you go. But 266 further up the list, we can be here in the United Kingdom, holding back.
God, could you imagine what would happen if there was a war in the UK? How...
I don't know. Do you think, is the comfort of a highly developed UK nation part of the problem? Let's be honest. Like, that is often part of the challenge, isn't it?
Maybe. I'd like to see where Ukraine was before.
What did Tony Robbins say recently? I heard him say that. I just thought he kept saying that it was really funny is that, the difference between, what someone in Ukraine thinks and what we think is that we just get the same annoyed about the fact that somebody hasn't put burger sauce on our burger. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That type of thing.
No perspective.
Anyway, there we go. So if you want to get out, that's, there's enough governmental reason, but there's a medical reason for you as well.
Don't go to Dubai.
Dubai's not the answer to everything. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, but Italy, nice glass of Pinot Grigio. Primitivo. That's a nice red one. And we'll nip over to Italy. Right, anyway, moving on to something much more positive that we can really help you with. We're going to talk about utilisation this week. Yes, I bet you've been wondering how you can get more profit without more sales. We're going to whiz through utilisation in this week's Deep Dive. So, Claire, this is all about utilising the things in your business, isn't it?
Yeah.
And why now? Why today? It's a great subject. We touched on it before, and we're going to go into it in great detail today. But what's the summarise what this is all about for us?
Yeah. So I was actually having a telephone call last week with a business owner, £20 million business, and he's making 4-5% profit. And I said to him, I think that your profit's quite low for the industry that you work in, and I think there's some opportunity there to get quite a significant jump in that. Probably, on 20 million, 4-5% is £1 million profit. And I said, I think we can probably get that up to 2 million at least by having a look at some of your numbers. And he said to me, it's historically a really low margin industry, blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, but all of your profit increases are going to come from running a really efficient business. And you run a really efficient business by utilising your assets as much as possible. And when I say this to people, often some business owners will quite flippantly say, we don't really have assets, we're a service-based business or something like that. So today we're just going to talk about the different types of assets that you can have in your business, some of the metrics that you could be tracking to make sure that you're utilising these as much as possible. Because we all know at the moment that, we're in quite unusual economic times. Nobody really knows if we're on the precipice of like the worst financial crash, worse than 2008, or whether things are about to explode into like amazing riches, or whether it's just going to be a lot of nothing coming over the next couple of years again. So,
but it's probably, but in Venice, I can't remember a time we hasn't felt like, aren't we always on the verge of either a big crash? Because that's the narrative we've read. So actually, it's probably just a normal year again, isn't it?
But it's the uncertainty that makes it nervous. So there will be a lot of business owners, myself included, thinking to grow, if, for example, I want to do X amount more turnover, or even if I just win one more customer, I need to put a new team member in. Or if I get one more customer, I need to move to a bigger office because I can't fit my team members in. Or if I want to expand into this area, I need to buy another van or invest in this equipment. And a lot of these assets come at a fixed price.
Yeah.
And so if you've got to take that leap to purchase the next asset, that could make the difference whether you're now loss making because you've had to make that investment before you've got the sales to support it.
It makes it like a really good point, like when you say it like that about uncertainty and whatever else. Because I feel like, we've been doing this podcast for more than 2 years, and basically that's just been the rhetoric we've always talked about, uncertainty. So that's just been the backdrop all the time. But then I'm sat here thinking, I've been out the workplace and owned my own businesses now for nearly a decade. I don't think there's ever been a year where I've known what's going on or there'd be certainty. Isn't that the plight of the entrepreneur, is that you're always dealing with the uncertainty?
I think you are always...
There's no certainty. I remember in the last 10 years.
I think you are always dealing with uncertainty, but we don't seem to have been through a time where people have rallied for a while now. I think coming out of COVID was the last time that businesses really felt that things were good, and things have felt hard for a while. So people are definitely in the later stages of being squeezed and feeling like they're under pressure and not investing and things like that. And so if you've had slow and steady growth over the last few years, but you haven't made any investments in things like assets and people and equipment and stuff like that, you might be at the point where you're thinking, we can't grow anymore without investing in some of this new stuff. But what we're going to talk about today is making sure that that really is the case, that you're getting as much as you can from the existing things that you've got, and that you're only upgrading when it's absolutely essential.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Great. And I think you've broken this into sort of five buckets, haven't you?
We've got 6 things to talk about. And we're not going to spend too much time on them, but we're just going to give you some ideas of the sorts of things that you can track for each category, so that you're really thinking across your entire business at all the different assets that could be available. Not necessarily the traditional word of asset of something physical like a fixed asset, just anything that your business could utilise better. Yeah,
great. And I think that's what people recognise from this, is that the definition of asset is quite broad and you can look at it in lots of different ways. So, okay, let's talk about number 1, which seems obvious. Not many businesses don't have this asset unless they're self-employed, and that is...
people. So... obviously people, particularly in a service-based industry, but, even if you are a product business, anything like that, people cost a lot of money these days. There's no two ways about it. Minimum wage is going up, wages in general are going up, employment taxes are going up, pensions going up, everything's up. So getting the most out of your people has never been more important than ever if you want to even maintain your profit, let alone try to get to the holy grail of increasing your profit. So when it comes to your people, some of the things that you could be tracking is just simply look at their time. So, this doesn't have to be that you've got some sort of time tracking app that literally tracks every minute that somebody's working. It could be that you're saying, I want at 10 o'clock, at 11 o'clock, at 12 o'clock, I just want you to log on to something and just tell me what you're doing at that point of time, just to get a flavour. That's one way of doing it. Or you could track higher metrics such as sales to labour ratio. So that would be looking at how many times your labour cost is your turnover, or revenue per employee generated, those types of things. So it'd be very easy to track that. And what you want to try and be looking at is percentages. So for example, in my business, we track revenue per employee. We don't get caught up with the value around that because wages are going up and employment costs are going up. So therefore, we have a target of 4 times our employees' cost is what our revenue should be per employee. And so try and track it as a ratio or a percentage rather than a fixed value, so that you're not getting caught out with inflation.
Great. And we're notoriously not very good at this in this country, is it? And that's why kind of this thing we hear about productivity that's been flat for 20 years is all about getting more out of
your existing
the people in this country. So when we've not been able to prove as a country we can do this in 20 years. So I don't think this is as easy as you think it is, because it is tough, isn't it?
And you've got to be really careful with this, because an obvious way to get more out of your salaried employees is to try and squeeze more hours out of them, make them work through their lunch break, make them feel like they've got to stay late and hit deadlines. And that can have a really negative effect on the business. So you've got to be really careful about introducing these blanket metrics without context to the team and without really empowering the team to make them feel like they can do something about these numbers. If you just put these metrics in place and use them as a stick to beat people, it's likely to have negative consequences, particularly when you're dealing with individuals.
Yeah. I guess when we did that Amazon tour, they deal with this quite well, don't they, in terms of product, because they gamify it. So, the more boxes or whatever else you pack in, the more ice cream you earn, and the more ice cream you earn, the more you can sell the ice cream to other ice cream owners and blah, blah, blah. And they just gamify it, and that works really quite well for them. So it's trying to think outside the box rather than just, if you bring the output metric right back to the business metric, people see it as very stark and kind of what it is. Whereas if you can take that metric and put it into an incentive-based scheme or something that gamifies it, you're likely to get a better result out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to thinking about taking on new employees in particular, one of the things that is quite effective, particularly if you've got a number of people, is we've talked about that step change of taking on a new employee is like another salary that you've got to cover from day one, regardless of if you've got the sales there. But could you say to your existing team, for example, how about temporarily, do you want to work 5-10 hours extra a week each or something like that, so that you can manage that step change until you're ready for that next full-time employee? You
do this really well with your guys, don't you? And the one-off work that they do and how you offer that as an additional to their salary. Just explain briefly how that works, because it works. I think that's quite a good idea.
Yeah, so we have the team have their own book of clients, for example, that they look after, and it's expected that they hit the ratios in terms of the value of the book of clients that they can look after. But we take one-off work as well. So we might do one-off business plans, acquisition work, due diligence, that type of thing. And when we do any one-off work, then if the team have the capacity to take on the extra work, they get a bonus and they get a proportion of the revenue that we get from that.
And the one-off work, yes.
Yeah.
Because as a business, that's effectively less budgeted for. I mean, you do expect it to be ongoing, but, again, it works because you're asking them to fit it around what they would already do. So potentially they would need to put some extra hours in for that, but they're going to get a bonus back in return for it. So the revenue share of the...
And we look at it like this as well. So the team are targeted that their book of clients should be 4 times their salary. But if their salary is already covered by the book of clients, then let's let them have that bonus. That 25% of that fee that we're charging for the one-off work then becomes their bonus.
Yeah. Great. Good. Right. So that's people done. Number 2?
Equipment and vehicles. So this is most prevalent if you are a business that's got vehicles, but if you're a manufacturing business as well, this is really important. The output that you get per machine or the output that you get per vehicle has never been more important. So when it comes to machinery and equipment, that's going to be about output mostly, jobs worked, customers served, units produced, all of those types of metrics. And then when it comes to vehicles, you're going to be looking at revenue per vehicle or, ideally profit per vehicle if you can get to that sort of level of information, miles driven, customers served per vehicle, all of those type of metrics. Downtime is also a really good one to track. Sometimes it's easier to track downtime than it is to track hours worked or days worked, because there tends to be less downtime. If you've got like a HGV is a classic example because of the rules around the operator's license and things like that. So you might have a HGV on the road for a month. Ideally, you're only going to have like 1 to 2 days of downtime per vehicle per month. That's much easier to track that small thing than it is to track the rest of it. Yeah. So days not worked, downtime, maintenance days, all of those types of things that you could track, then you could by default say everything else was on the job work.
I think I presume if you have a transport business, you'll really understand this, because utilisation
you would be surprised.
Is everything they talk about. Well, when I ran a warehouse, 15 years ago, we only had 21 vehicles. And our MD and our director, like everything in my metric was about utilisation of those vehicles. It was so important. We had to have those vehicles, running all day. It's all they ever talked about. So I'd be surprised if your business is just a transport business, like that this isn't like everything you talk about in your business day in, day out, I guess.
Yeah. So on the simplest of calculations. If you don't have a lot of data around this, you could be looking at revenue per vehicle or revenue per machine, whatever your equipment is. But, ideally, if you've got vehicles, there is so much value in the data. So if you've got some sort of route tracking app, if you can track miles that the vehicles are driving, all of that type of thing, when you get into route planning, that's really where you can get some efficiencies, because not only can you get more out of the vehicle per day, you'll reduce your fuel costs, you'll reduce your driver costs, all of that kind of goes into it. So if you're a logistics business in particular, there's massive profit that could be eroded or made just by having the right software to help with that route planning stuff.
Actually, the people bit also interlinks with this, because if you get the route right, you get the person and the van back quicker, and the person can be redeployed somewhere else. We used to have packing and delivery, and we knew that if we could get those routes right, and we get all of those vans back 30 minutes early with all the people, we've got 30 more minutes of packing on the whole team to do on the floor. Really clever. And when those two dovetail really well together.
When you then start looking at this on the bigger picture, so a lot of people probably listening to this podcast, probably the thought of running like a 24-hour manufacturing operation or delivery operation is probably quite scary. But when I was working at a manufacturing business just down the road from here, actually, one of the things that we transitioned to was that we were at capacity, and we were at capacity from a warehouse perspective, a team perspective, and a machinery perspective. So the option was to get another warehouse, put another team and another load of machines in, or it was to start expanding the hours. So we went 24 hours a day, which meant that those machines could be utilised all day, every day. Not only were the machines being utilised, but the buildings then being utilised, the delivery vehicles are being utilised, kind of everything wraps into it. So just by taking our utilisation as close to 100% as possible in terms of available hours in the day. And this is where I will often have conversations with business owners, and they'll say, we're working 9 to 5. And I'm like, okay, that's only a third of the day.
Do you know what? It really resonates, doesn't it? Because the more you educate yourself on these things, you can look back at things in your life and go, I really see that with there's a really famous quote in my book of quotes, isn't there, about seeing when the things you see change, when you make a change, the things that you see change, something like that. And this is really interesting, because it's like, I remember back when I was a child and my dad he was a printer, and I remember he used to work like 9 to 5. And then one day he came back and he'd been called into consultation and various other things, and they were moving to a 2-shift system that started at 6 and ended at 10 at night. So again, that's all about utilisation. So he was on this morning shift or late shift, and all of a sudden they could run the machines for twice as long within the same 24-hour period.
And the only extra thing they had to pay for was people.
Yeah.
So all of that profit, they didn't have to put new machines on. They didn't have to pay for more rent or anything like that. It's literally just people, some utilities and some materials. So the profitability attached with those extra shifts was massive.
Massive. But you think about how it affects the employee, coming from my dad's perspective, it was like, this is a real thing. And his biggest fear was the next step would be a night shift.
Yeah.
And it probably would have been. It never did do that. But that's the next. And then you have a 3-shift system. And then before you know it, your machines are running 24 hours a day. So, we were talking a lot about vehicles, but this is about equipment. And actually, production equipment is probably more important for those businesses than the vehicle utilisation. It's so essential, isn't it, in manufacturing?
Yeah. Cool. Absolutely.
Great. So what have we got next? Number 3.
Okay, property and space. So this is quite obvious. It kind of links to what we were just talking about. If you're renting a building and you're thinking that you're running out of space for whatever reason, you need more space for more people and more space for more equipment. Just think about that slightly differently. How can you use the space when it's not traditionally used? So for example, a classic one of this is we use our office, but we go to our office on Sundays to record the podcast. Rather than renting a soundproof podcast studio, we just come to the office when nobody's here and do it here.
Yeah.
That's an example of utilisation.
A really, really good example. Two huge examples would be, one would be self-storage and one would be WeWork.
Yeah.
Where you're taking an asset, a building, and you're splitting it up into as many small parts as you can. You're reselling them on individually. That's like a business version of sweating a property asset, so to speak. But you need to think about that in your own business, don't you? If you've got that property, how can you sweat that property asset more? Are you storing things off-site that you could be storing on-site and saving the money of that and utilising that part of the property better? Could you put a shipment container in the car park to store the stuff from and pay somebody?
We did this when we got a bit tight in the office. We had these nice big desks, and did we need big desks? No, we just got new desks, and we could fit an extra person in.
You're a digital company, so you get smaller desks and you get 2 more people in the office, and it's like, okay. Again, really good use of utilisation of space or property, isn't it? Really, really good one.
And this is really poignant at the moment, because a lot of businesses, similar to ours, we'll probably have a level of flexibility in their working. So we always have a work from home day. It's normally a Wednesday. Our team work from home. So what could we do with our space on a Wednesday to utilise that office and maybe generate some revenue? Could we sublet it? Could we hold customer events there instead of off-site? All of those types of things.
I've got a really good idea. If we completely deck this out like with professional podcast equipment, we could make Wednesday
a podcast studio.
The podcast studio day where other companies come in and they pay for the day to use the studio or things like that.
Well, there we go.
It's a clever idea, isn't it?
That is a clever idea. Let's see the PCG podcast studio advertised soon. Yeah. So thinking about your property and your space, the most obvious way to look at that is revenue per square foot generated, or the amount of space that's been utilised as a proportion of the total space.
The other thing to mention about property is linked to business rates. I mean, we're doing it ourselves with businesses where it's like now the space is like business rates is kicking in a space that's smaller than ever, and it's kicking in higher than ever. So if you can get more out of a smaller space, more people, more desks, more people under one roof, and avoid business rates if you can be under that, or avoid paying more business rates than you need to, that is again about utilisation, isn't it?
I've just realised this is like a great podcast on how to be a really tight person.
I know, it's amazing.
Be a proper
this is basically how to start a business, isn't it? Like how to bootstrap a business, this should be called. Might change the title.
So number 4, we've got systems and software. This is often overlooked, and I think people, myself included, I love a bit of software. I'll try anything, and I've got software subscriptions coming out my ears, and it's like, are we really getting value for money out of this? How do you rate it? So a couple of things you could look at here is features used versus features paid for. Have a minimum that if you're not going to utilise 25% of the features, for example, that you just simply don't get the software, that type of thing. But also time saved versus automated tasks, or the amount of time that people spend using the software. A lot of the software will have these sort of tracking audit things in there, so that information should be quite easy to get. Number 5, probably the biggest asset that a lot of businesses have and is massively underutilised, is your customer list. And I think this is why it's important that we're not just thinking about physical assets here, and we're thinking about asset in the much broader sense of the term. So, the size of your customer list, that's important, but what proportion of your customer list is active? So how many people are actually buying from you? How many people are in contact with you? How many people read your email? All of those types of statistics that you could be tracking to understand how well you're utilising that asset of your customer list.
I think, sorry to rewrite the podcast halfway through it, Claire, I think there's a better one for that point than customer list, and that's just data.
Well, yes.
We're in this world where it's like, how utilisation of your data, actually, I don't think people are very good. They've spent 20 years collecting digital data, and I don't think we're very good at how we now weaponise that.
I would suggest that I think it's a case of analysis paralysis for a lot of the business owners that we work with. They're just, and we'll come on to that in a minute, kind of an FD's perspective on this, but they are so stuck analysing minute levels of detail and data that they're not making any decisions or moving the needle forward because of that.
Yeah, true. There is a sweet spot. You've got to be careful, but...
Hey, but look, it's normally, as a general rule, it's much easier to re-warm up an old customer or an old lead or somebody that you've already got a relationship with than it is to try and start from scratch every time. So customer list is just so easy to go after at the moment. Drop some emails, send a newsletter, just get on LinkedIn, send them a message, say hello. There's so many ways you can utilise your customer list, and that can make a stark difference profitability-wise.
Yes, and there's a really, really famous saying that the diamonds you seek are often beneath your feet.
Very true.
And that, I think, totally resonates with this thing of data. It's like you will have your next customer will be in your database somewhere already. So you can go looking for their next one. It's really hard. It's really expensive to do, to find the new bit of data, or you can find a better way of farming the data you've got to find where that next customer is, or that upsell is, or various other things. So great. Finally,
the final one we've got
Number
is
6.
I've written down cash, but I'm actually going to call it working capital because I think it's a bit broader. So how are you using your cash in your business? Tracking things. Have you got debt that you're being charged interest on, but you've got cash sitting in the bank? It's all that type of thing. So a really simple way for a business to look at this is to look at their debtor days. So how many days on average does it take your customers to pay you? How many days on average does it take you to pay your suppliers? All of those types of things will tell you how much you are utilising your cash. And if you're a stock business in particular, then your working capital cycle is going to be absolutely critical to managing the cash flow in your business. That tells you how many days it takes you to convert an item of stock into cash in your bank.
Yeah, we kind of had to put cash on there, didn't we? But honestly, like that is...
We could talk for hours on that.
Well, it is a third of all podcasts we talk about are about managing your cash, let's be honest. But it has to go on there because it is an asset and it is one you've got to utilise. So we did need to talk about it, didn't we?
And understanding those deep nuances of how your cash flows in and out of your business and where you're really getting leakages. Because again, I see a lot of business owners, they've got these lengthy spreadsheets, they've got every single direct debit, every single coffee that they've ever bought is logged on there. But you just miss the bigger picture. Like you don't really see where you can make some significant wins and things like that if you're too stuck in the detail. And that kind of leads me on nicely to sort of as a finance director, my perspective on this is that you need to really be looking at the big picture and not perfect data. If you're trying to get perfect data, analyze everything, if we take people, for example, if you ask your people to track everything, nobody's going to track anything.
Yeah.
So you just need enough that you can get a big picture view on what's going on and identify some areas that you might want to dive deeper or make some good decisions.
Yeah, we've been talking a bit lately about like concise information. People aren't reading like 15, 20 pages of stuff. And we saw this on a program last night, didn't we, which we watched in The Diplomat, where she said, she'd been given this report and it was 20 pages long, and she was like screaming. She was like, if they ever give me something like that without an executive summary on it again, they're going to be fired. And it's like, they only care about that executive summary and the detail is an if they want to go into its situation. They want the detail, but they don't. They just want the summary because these are busy people and all the rest of that. So yeah, that's another one. Great. I've really enjoyed that. That was better than I thought it was going to be, which is, I like to be honest with people, but I thought it was going to be a good pod, but I think that was an excellent pod actually. So I really enjoyed that. Camera angle was quite good. I'm really annoyed that I didn't pull the tree behind you because you're just on a cream wall and I think it looked a bit dull.
Because I've got a cream jumper
So for the next podcast, I need to pull the tree across a little bit more. And I've realised just how little you look at me during the podcast because on most of it, you're looking over there, here, ups, down, whatever. So I'm not sure it's really going to work. We're going to revert back to the one that makes you look like less of a unit. But that would make me very happy. Anyway, let's move on to this week's Profit Cash Growth Extra. So this week, Claire, seeing as we seem to have crammed like quite a lot of jokes and quotes in this week's podcast, I wanted to provide a quote, but I did want to link it to a book because I read the quote in a book. So I'm going to recommend a book and then I'm going to read my favourite takeaway from the book. The book that I recently read is from David Ogilvy, who's a very famous advertising giant in the US, and one of his earlier books called Confessions of an Advertising Man. It was actually written originally in 1965 and I really enjoyed it, because it makes you realise, it talks about his early story of building the advertising, maybe the first 20 years of building the business, really bootstrapping it. And a lot of the things he talks about are lessons that we're still so clear today. Things like recruiting, senior, expensive people before you can even afford them, all that type of thing. Also just talking so much about copywriting.
Well, hang on, is that good or bad?
No, good.
You recruit really expensive people before you can afford it. Yeah.
He basically,
we do that.
He basically recruited an MD to run his business. He recognised that he one of his sort of themes in the book is that, everybody can be better than me at everything, but woe betide anybody challenge me on being the best copywriter in the world. So he saw himself simply as the best copywriter in the world, but everything else, somebody else can do better. So he just put MD in, whatever else, and he was just the lead copywriter in his business. So he effectively the product man, I guess. So he just drove the product in the same way that some businesses drive the marketing or whatever. They always keep the one thing. And there's a saying from a long while ago, I remember always, which is only do what only you can do, which somebody used to say to me 10 years ago when I was starting a business. But this was my favourite quote from the book that he put. It was, if each of us hires people who are smaller than we are, we shall become a company of dwarfs. If each of us hires people who are bigger than we are, we shall become a company of giants.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a wonderful, wonderful quote to finish the pod on.
I thought it was really interesting. I know you just said we're going to finish the pod, but I'm going to add something.
You can carry on, my lovely. You can. No problem at all.
We've just had a new FD join Profit Cash Growth, Chris. And when I came off the first interview with him, I can remember I turned to you and I went, I'm a little bit scared because he's a better FD than I am. And I was like, that scares me, but that makes me know that this is the right decision and that this is a good hire.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes as business owners, our ego can absolutely get in the way and our own confidence can get in the way sometimes. But when you have those feelings that somebody is better than you and that scares you, they're probably the right person to go with.
It's a real green light feeling. Yeah, it's fantastic. Brilliant. Well, enjoyed that today. And as always, if you feel like you might have outgrown your current accountant, you'd like to work with Claire and the team at Profit Cash Growth, nip over to the website, profitcashgrowth.com. On there, you can book a discovery call with Claire to have a look at your business. Also, do get on the website, order a copy of Claire's book, Profit by Numbers, a free hard copy in the post, especially great for 7-figure business owners looking to take that next step and haven't quite got the financial functions in place. And rate, review and subscribe to the podcast and listen back to any of the old episodes because they're all lovely and evergreen, and just share this one with any friends that you think will benefit from it. And as always, we will see you again next week.